Okay, Mary, are you on board?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can. So what I'd like everybody to do is if you have any problems with audio, just let us know and you can continue raising your hand and typing in questions in your panel and I'll try and get to those. We're going to do um, we're going to do a presentation from Mary first, and then we'll do question and answer. And then we have Jenny Holmes from the congregations from the Interfaith Network for Earth Concerns, which is a program from the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And we'll do a short Q&A after that as well. So feel free to ask questions along the way, and I'll collect those and throw those at our presenters at the end. Mary, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Mary Rager. I'm the plant ecologist with the Pollinator Partnership. The Pollinator Partnership is a nonprofit organization that works to conserve and protect pollinators through education, outreach, restoration, and research. And I'll get into some of our materials later. We also run the North American Pollinator Protection Campaign, which the Tributary Fund has taken a great lead in the our faith task force. The North American Pollinator Protection Campaign is a number of different task forces that do projects throughout the year, and thanks to Claire, we're really happy to offer these presentations. And this talk, just getting started, an overview, we're going to go over planting for pollinators, different garden techniques you could use, native bee and plant associations, and resources that the Pollinator Partnership offers to help you along your way. We'll talk about things that you could do to get a garden going, but then also different techniques you could do to enhance an existing garden. If the need for pollinators isn't just something that you feel strongly about, usually the figure that insect pollination contributes over $200 billion to global crop production every year usually gets people's attention. So, but one of the problems is only 12 species of plants provide 75% of our food. So just managing for our own needs is not really going to create a dynamic living ecosystem. Here are a couple citations, both papers that if you're interested in, I would recommend following up on. We need genetic diversity to maintain ecological integrity, and that means planting a huge diversity of plant species, not just a few plants that we want because either A, they're lovely to look at, easy to grow, or they provide food for us. So the Pollinator Partnership always encourages people to plant native species because it's the most inclusive kind of plants you could plant. They create a dynamic habitat that benefits more than just honeybees, which most of our food is pollinated by. Bees, butterflies, beetles, flies, all could pollinate milkweed. So you could see the milkweed seeds in the right of the screen. And planting native species also supports endangered species in the area as well. Here's an endangered species in California. This is taken in Southern California in Ventura County. It's the Santa Susana tar plant. It's native to the Santa Monica Mountains. It's a California listed species and it attracts many kinds of bees. So you could think of your garden as providing habitat for rare and endangered plant species too. We've been doing research on this plant, and it turns out when the plants are closer to restored areas that we used native mix with, native seed mix, there's a higher abundance and diversity of pollinators. So again, creating a diverse habitat really increases the number of pollinators and the diversity. But of course, ornamental herb and vegetable gardens are great too. We're certainly not advocating that they get ripped up, but as we move through this presentation, you might think about ways to incorporate plants native to your region in your existing garden. So gardening for pollinators, like us, all pollinators need shelter and water. They need a food source, which are pollen and nectar. So we'll talk about maintaining bloom. We'll also talk about garden design. Like I just mentioned, if you have an ornamental herb or vegetable garden, there are a few different strategies you could implement that will make your garden much more attractive to pollinators. And of course, things like a bee. If you're interested in attracting native bees to your garden, think like one. We'll go through that too. Like I said, bees need shelter just like us. They don't all live in hives like honeybees do. They are either wood nesting or ground nesters. And you can see this bee here is building their wood nested habitat. It could be done either in wood or debris that you have laying around, or they'll even take the pithy material that dies out at the end of the growing season and start building their nest there. So don't completely remove all of your dead material. If you're gardening in an area where aesthetically you're okay with leaving some debris, that could certainly be pollinator habitat. What bees do is make a little, it's called bee bread, and you can see it in the picture on the right. It's the orange, small orange circle. So make a bee bread, which is pollen that they've collected, put it in one of those little compartments, and then lay their egg on top. So throughout the dormant season, their larvae are actually eating this bee bread that they left for them. So it's really important that they have good structures to lay their eggs, to have their bee bread, so that their offspring can continue thriving in the following growing season. So don't destroy ground nests either. Not only do they wood nest, they also nest in the ground. And I've got a video in a moment to show you what a ground nesting bee would look like. Avoid tilling, especially in squash areas. If you have a pumpkin patch, if you could avoid tilling, you'll maintain the squash bees nests that are usually ground nesting. And consider installing a bee box, and we'll go through a couple examples of those. So here you can see a ground nesting bee. They've got their little compartments and cavities underground. The little orange circle is the bee bread, and then the larva is on top. And oftentimes people, we're going to show a little video here, people will confuse ground nesting bee nest, a native bee nest, with wasp nest. So here's a megachile bee. It's a type of native bee. It'll pollinate your vegetable garden, your herb garden, your ornamental garden. And these are their cavities. You can see the little bee coming out the chimney up top. Other ground nesting bees pile up dirt that are often mistaken for wasp nests. And unfortunately, I did some quick searches on YouTube this morning. Most of the videos, if you search ground nesting bees, are people spraying Raid down the nest. So keep in mind that not all nests with insects coming out of it are wasps or spiders. Okay. Also, your perennial grasses, even though they don't provide pollen and nectar from their flowers are really unnoticeable. They do provide shelter for a lot of insects too. So don't think if you're planting for pollinators, you need to remove them. Here are a couple kinds of bee boxes. Bee boxes could be really simple, like this one in the top left. There's just a little container herb garden on a balcony, and this bee box contains, it's just made out of cardboard, pretty simple, easy to do. You could do something much more ornamental if you'd like in your garden, but this provides wood nesting bees with a place to go already. So your garden will be even more attractive to them. Just make sure, kind of like having people live in apartments, if you're inviting bees to your garden and installing a bee box, you're going to want to clean it out every year so that disease and debris don't accumulate and injure the bees or get them sick. In the bottom right, there's just a little wooden block above a lavender plant that has holes drilled into it that could also attract bees. Again, like us, bees need, and all pollinators need, a water source. You didn't see that message from Windows. This water source could be your bird bath. It could be a small dish you leave out. Butterflies, bees, flies, they all need water. Just make sure if you have a large water source like a bee bath shown on the left, that you empty the water out weekly to avoid mosquito larvae accumulation. So we asked a question. I'm not sure if everyone got it. The question was, how many types of plants can bees learn to forage from at a single time? I'm not sure if we could view the results at this point, but they can only learn to forage one kind of plant at a time. So it's really important to plant in clumps, plant in groups. Planting, single novel species throughout your garden is great if you're a collector of plants, but it makes foraging really difficult for pollinators. This penstemon planting here would be great. The bees would all learn to forage this one kind of penstemon. They'd work through it, and then they would move on to the next species. I often use myself and recommend to others using a planting chart, and I'll show you an example in a minute. It's really helpful so that you're maintaining a bloom throughout the season. And 3 species during each season is also really beneficial. 3 species in spring, summer, and fall for pollinators to forage from. Here, this phlox, it's a great garden plant. There's some native species of it. This would be terrific for pollinators because it's already clump forming. It could work all of those flowers and then move on to the next clump of phlox further down your bed. So think like a bee, planting in clumps is great for them. Also, early flowering trees are terrific. This witch hazel here is a great aesthetic ornamental to incorporate into any garden, but they're also early bloomers, so they provide forage before a lot of the other flowers, start peaking in the middle of summer. A lot of trees also provide pollen sources, like this tulip poplar. So don't forget to just look up. Bees would love to pollinate some of our larger woody plants as well. Here's a planting chart example. The planting chart on the left has all of the species I selected for this particular project. I chose whether or not I was going to incorporate it using seed or plants. And I also marked off the months that it would be blooming. So from early March all the way through November, there will be something blooming for the pollinators. And you can see, of course, in the summer is where the majority of the blooms will happen. But again, there are pollinators out, late February, early March that will need to forage as well. When you have a garden that you're planting for, using seed is often the least expensive choice, but it takes the longest to establish. So if you're planting seed, remember it'll be at least 2 or 3 years before you have mature species, specimens available for pollinators. If you choose to plant plants, they'll be available for pollinators to forage off of, possibly as soon as you get them into the ground. So if you have a really large area, seeds are, much more economical. If you're planting a smaller area or enhancing your current garden, I would encourage people to buy, small plug plants if you don't want to spend a lot of money. And we've been encouraging people to start small and scale up. Even if you have like a small balcony, you could get something like this grow bag and plant for pollinators. You can see there's at least 4 or 5 species just in that little balcony bag. Bees will certainly forage. Other pollinators will be attracted to it as well. If you have a ground space that you'd like to garden, something 5 by 5 or 3 by 10 is certainly a great way to start a pollinator garden. Just like any garden you begin with, it's always easier to start small and scale up than start really big and get overwhelmed, possibly discouraged, and move on to something else. If you have an existing vegetable garden like this one here, plant inside your existing garden for pollinators. Sometimes people are inclined to plant outside their garden fence. You really want the pollinators as close to your vegetables as possible, or your ornamentals as possible. And if you were a bee, you would really like to work in this T shape, forage down the middle and then to either side. So if there was a way to enhance your garden with some native species down the middle, that would be the most beneficial for the native pollinators, and then in turn they would have easy access to move throughout your vegetable plants as well. Pesticides are it's really important that you always read the label if you choose to use pesticides. We, of course, encourage an adaptive approach to control pests or integrated pest management. There's tons of information out there on that, but pesticides really are harmful to pollinator populations, especially if they're applied incorrectly. Also, part of IPM is learning to identify your pests properly. Just like people mistake ground nesting bees for wasps, which they consider a pest, and destroy the nest, the same could be applied to leaf damage. On the left, you'll see there's actual aphid or thrips damage, and then on the right are little leaf cuttings made by beneficial leaf cutter bees. So know your pests before you design a plan of attack. If you would confuse the leaf cutter markings with, an aphid or, mealyworms, you would probably take a different approach than if you knew they were beneficial bees in your garden. And here in the bottom right, you could see a leafcutter bee. The leafcutter bee makes these little circles and leaves. They really, unlike some other insects, they don't damage the entire leaf. They won't completely defoliate your garden by any means, but they wrap up a little portion of the leaf, kind of like a burrito, and they drive it off to their wood nesting cavity and use it to build their nest and compartmentalize their eggs and bee bread. So it's really important that leaf-cutting bees have access to some foliage. Just to recap on this part, always provide shelter. Don't forget to have water. Do your best to maintain bloom, and that will maintain a steady stream of pollinators in your garden. Create corridors by enhancing the garden you currently have or the space you have to work. Always be conscientious about your pesticide use. And now we're going to move on to some different kinds of native bees that you could learn to recognize in your garden. And most often their body shape is the best way to figure out what kind of plants they would be most attracted to. So we'll start with the large carpenter bee. See a couple pictures here. Large carpenter bees, they're probably one of the biggest bees you'll see. So they'll be attracted to big flowers. They could either work a flower that's flat or one that's tubular. They'll often cheat though. In this tubular plant flower, you could see they cut a hole in the back and go straight to the nectar instead of entering through the front. Once that hole is established, smaller sweat bees will then begin using the hole too. There's also much smaller carpenter bees, Ceratina. They work much smaller flowers and work lower to the ground. So you can see here the sneezeweed would be terrific for both large and small carpenter bees. And it would also, if you planted this, sneezeweed is also pollinated by flies and butterflies too. So great plant, it's native, and it grows in a lot of different conditions throughout many parts of the country. Sweat bees, these are probably my favorite kind of bee to see. They come in bright green varieties. They really like a flat landing pad or something that's disc shaped. So you can see here the sunflower. It's also native to many parts of the country. It's this shape. It's a really nice landing pad for them just to hone in on. It's easy to grow in many kinds of conditions, just like the sneezeweed. And it's also attractive to beetles, flies, and butterflies. So a great plant to plant, not just for bees, but for other pollinators as well. Bumblebees. Bumblebees can manipulate a variety of flower types. They also do this unique kind of pollination called buzz pollination. Tomatoes are, and anything in the Solanaceae family is dependent on this buzz pollination. So if you have a tomato garden, you'll also want to plant additional species that will encourage bumblebees to come to your garden. They'll have a variety of floral resources right before your tomato flowers are ready to be pollinated, and right after, and your tomato crop will be much higher with more pollen and nectar sources available. Here's that leaf cutting bee again that makes the little holes in the leaves. Because of its robust body shape, it could work a variety of flowers, more complex flowers than what we saw in those two sunflowers. So something like this white turtle head that has a little cap on it, something like a leaf cutting bee could certainly work its way in there and obtain pollen and nectar resources. Mason and orchard bees, are so well known for working anything in the Rosaceae family. You can see here they're pollinating a cherry tree, possibly an almond tree. So there are other roses that you could plant too if you don't have room for cherry or almond trees. You could also plant, raspberry, blueberry, anything in the rose family. Squash bees. Squash bees are what pollinate all of our squashes, the cucurbits. So zucchinis, pumpkins, squashes, all sorts of squashes. They're thought to have migrated with squash crops from South and Central America up into North America. Oops, going back to that real quick, I mentioned earlier, these guys are ground nesters. So if you have a pumpkin patch, avoid tilling as possible so that your squash bees will come back year after year. Longhorn bees, Melissodes, again, they have a robust body, which means they can manipulate many kinds of flowers. They could do something like a sunflower or something like an echinacea, both pictured here. And these various kinds of bees are native throughout the entire country. So if you become familiar with the native bees in this presentation, you'll see them pretty much anywhere you live in the lower 48. Mining bees, Andrena, they're early season emergers, and their body shape is really similar to sweat bees. They're kind of small, but if you planted azaleas, this would be a great plant for them to forage. Again, that's where the planting chart comes into play. It's nice to just see what you have coming on in late February or early March that would be attracted to the early season pollinators. So here, pink azalea, it's a native plant, blooms from March to May, and it's pollinated by bees. We have a number of different resources that would help you select the kinds of plants both you would like to enjoy in your garden and the pollinators would also benefit from. The Pollinator Partnership also has a Be Smart School Garden Kit for children and a program called Share, which I'll get into in a minute. We've pulled together eco-regional planting guides for 32 eco-regions across the country. If you go to our website, you could plug in your zip code and you'll get a free PDF of the planting guides that you could print off yourself. In the planting guides, we list the botanical name, the common name, then the different growing requirements, sun, shade, water requirements. So you could start picking out plants that would fit most well in your garden, and then the kind of pollinators that each species is attracted to, or vice versa. We've taken the data from the planting guides and put it into a free app called the Be Smart Pollinator Gardener. It's the same principle. You could enter your zip code. You'll get a list of plants native to your region, and you'll also get a picture and then the growing requirements. You could select your favorite plant. So if you go through your list, select your favorites, and you'll have your favorites stored on your smartphone when you go to the nursery. You'll never forget what kind of plants you went there for. You could also sort based on the kinds of pollinators you'd like to attract or different garden characteristics like your water situation or sun, or the kinds of plants you want. If you're looking for a larger woody plant, tree or shrub, if you're looking for a forb, or you're interested in a vine. We also offer a number of free brochures on our website. You could order them through the Pollinator Partnership, and you just have to pay for shipping, but you could also print them off for free. We have one that is called No Fear of Stings. Bees and other pollinators are your garden friends. If you need to speak to anybody about, how bees are beneficial if they're afraid of stings, which I know a lot of people are, this is a great brochure to kind of explain the benefits of having bees around. Our Be Smart School Garden Kit is for children grades 3 through 6, although there are activities that could go probably a grade or two lower and a grade or two higher. There are 10 lesson plans that are tied to state standards. Each lesson plan includes educator guidance, kind of walking the teacher through the lesson. There's information on starting a school garden in the Be Smart School Garden Kit, but we really tried to emphasize not every school needs to have a garden for the kids to learn about pollinators. So there's lots of in the classroom hands-on activities, there's posters, homework. We also provide some native seed for native plants that they could plant to complement their vegetable garden. A couple of botanic gardens, Arboreta, have purchased this and put it in their teacher resource center so that every teacher in the Cleveland area doesn't have to get this. They could just go there and Xerox whatever lesson plans they'd like to implement at their garden. Here are the contents of the school garden kit. We really wanted to make this fun and interesting for kids. So in the top right of the display, they all plant a cucumber plant of their own. They could either take it home or plant it in their school garden together. The binder is full of the 10 lesson plans. There's posters, there's games and activities. And we also just started this program called SHARE. It stands for Simply Having Areas Reserved for the Environment. Our goal is to get 1 million acres registered as SHARE. We're trying to reach out to anybody that has any land with any influence over it, if that's a farmland, a school garden, a church garden, even your back porch or a balcony, they could all be converted into pollinator habitat with just a few small steps. Again, we're not looking for people to do all native species or any size requirement. It's just making that first step to take a couple small actions to support the environment and the pollinators that live there. And here's some of our share sites across the country so far. I invite all of you to register your gardens as share sites. We would love to have some more dots on this map. And that's it for me. If anyone had questions that aren't answered during this session, I could be reached at mr@pollinator.org.
Thank you so much, Mary. We do have some questions that people have been typing in, so I'll throw some of these at you. A couple people want to know when the best time of the year is to clean out bee boxes.
The best time of year to clean it out would be probably as soon as the little bees emerge, like February, March. You'll just have to keep an eye on it. But once they emerge, you'll want to clean it out.
Okay. Somebody else has said that they have lots of carpenter bees that nest in their deck railings. Is there a way to prevent that by providing other nesting, for example?
Yeah, exactly. And you'll basically want to entice them away from your beautiful deck into, you know, some other debris, some wood structures. You can install one of those bee boxes. It might take several years. You could also try caulking up the holes after they emerge. Unfortunately, most people I know that have tried that, they like returning to the same spot every year, so they'll probably just dig out the caulk. So don't be surprised if that happens. But if there's an area that you can make more attractive than your deck, give it a try.
If there are gardens developed in public spaces like schools or church grounds, are there safety concerns with bee allergies?
I'm sure that there are. We basically, tell people that bees are more interested in their own work, which is foraging for pollen and nectar, than they are in, chasing you around and stinging you. I would encourage you to read the No Fear of Stings brochure and just really educate people on, or the people that they're working with on, what bees are about, their behaviors, and kind of demystify the thought that they're really out to sting anyone.
Here's another one. We have a co-op play school focused on environment. We have materials been adapted for preschools where children begin to form their fears of insects?
We do have some materials that would reach younger kids. The school garden kit definitely has activities that would be fun for preschool age kids. If they're interested, I'd be happy to follow up with some additional resources.
Do you happen to know of any pollinator projects at a museum?
Yeah, Cleveland Museum of Natural History does a lot of outreach on native plants and pollinators. I'm sure the same is true with many other museums. I don't know of an art museum, for example, but lots of natural history museums, botanic gardens, arboreta are all doing pollinator gardens and outreach too.
I'm not positive, but I think the Portland Art Museum might have pollinator pots on their courtyard.
Cool.
Here's another one. How far can the water source be from the bee's nest or shelter?
It could actually be kind of far, but if you don't have to make it more difficult for them, there's no reason to. Some bees can travel up to a mile to forage, possibly a little further. So they could certainly move around to get the resources they need.
And did you mention a scripture earlier?
I did not.
Okay. Veronica, you had a question about that. And we actually, the Tributary Fund, in collaboration with Pollinator Partnership, created 4 brochures. One's for pollinators and Christianity, One is, yeah, she's pulling this slide back up. One's Buddhism and pollinators, one's Judaism and pollinators, and one is Islam and pollinators. And each of those have specific examples of scripture and ideas that can be used in congregations as they're attempting to do pollinator protection projects through their congregation. And actually, we have Jenny Holmes online. She'll be talking in a little bit about what Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon has done, not specifically for pollinator gardens, but for habitat restoration. And so we'll pull her on. Actually, let me see if there are any more questions. Okay, actually, thank you so much, Mary. That was great. We got some great feedback from everybody. And I'm going to switch over now to Jenny Holmes and share my screen. Hold on just a second here. And I'm trying to share my screen. Nope, it looks like we're seeing Caroline's screen. Okay, sorry about that. I'm apparently not able to share my screen, which has Jenny's photos. So we're going to be without photos for this presentation, but you'll have good imaginations and you'll be able to see what you'll be able to visualize what she's thinking of. Are you on with us now? Let me see. I have to click another button here. Sorry, folks. Are you on, Jenny?
Hi, this is Jenny.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can. So thank you for joining us and for talking about what your organization has done. I don't know if you could hear, but I am having trouble bringing up my screen with your slides with you as the presenter. Oh, wait, here we go.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Claire. It's really great to be partnering with the Tributary Fund on this project and helping you get the word out to Portland area congregations on your pilot project. We were really excited to find out about this project as we have been doing quite a bit of work recently on helping congregations with watershed and wildlife projects. And our role has been a primarily connecting type role, along with helping congregations tackle some of the more challenging problems, which aren't just the technical problems, but how do you get your congregation interested in even doing such a project? How do you get sustainable long-term support for a project, and who might be partners in your community to make your congregation-based project also a community project, and then integrating it into the whole life of the congregation in worship and education and activities that the congregation does, so that it's not just someone's project that got done 5 years ago and now the invasives have come back because that person maybe left the church or passed on. But we really focused on how to make this an integral part of the life of the congregation, as we believe that caring for the earth should be an integral part of every congregation of any faith. And so this this handbook that we produce, called Congregations Caring for Watersheds and Wildlife, is online. We have it on a website, and it's www.wildlifeandwatersheds.org, and you can download any section of it or the whole thing if you'd like. There are some more technically oriented chapters. We worked on this in partnership with the Southwest Watershed Resource Center, which is a center in Southwest Portland that assists all kinds of organizations with watershed restoration and organizes different work days and workshops and so forth. But we have a project section on the steps you would go through to plan a project, and then a chapter on incorporating the project into the congregation's worship and education life. And we have a list of a lot of different organizations, both national and in the Portland area, that might be of use to your congregation if you're in this area. But I would recommend it to any congregation just to get some tips on how to do these projects with faith communities. And we have a lot of case studies, and some of those are in the handbook. But we've got various faiths represented. There's still some that we're working on, but once we got looking to find these projects, we were amazed how many of them were out there. But also there's just so much potential for more of them, and whatever the scale they're at, whether it just be a planter box or a 2-acre field, they can really have an impact not only on the congregation but on the communities surrounding it. And right now we are specifically looking for 3 congregations in East Multnomah County who will be demonstration sites for their community. And pollinators would certainly be a great focus for some of those demonstration gardens. So we do have some resources to work with congregations who want to actually be a demonstration site for their members and the whole community. So that's about all I have to share right now. We'd love to work with any Portland area congregations who are interested in this project.
Thank you, Jenny.
See, we have the blessing of the stream.
Here's Jenny's contact information. Oh, here's some more gardeners. Their native plants, which it looks like some might be pollinators in there too. I can't tell. And here's Jenny's contact information. So if you missed that as she said it, you can write it down here. Let me check really fast and see if I have any questions. So you might be curious about why we're talking about faith groups in conjunction with pollinators. And the Tributary Fund is an organization that engages communities in protecting wildlife and habitat by connecting cultural traditions, religions, and conservation science. It's a unique fit, but it's actually really effective. Huge swaths of land across the world are owned by faith groups, and so and all of the faiths that we've looked at have some sort of sacred text that identifies pollinators and protecting nature as important. So that's sort of the direction of the Tributary Fund, and we're really grateful to have partners such as Pollinator Partnership and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And we're also thankful to have the Gilhausen Family Foundation support us with this initial project. This is our first launch. We've done other projects on other species in other parts of the world, but this is our launch for pollinators. We have this series of webinars. We'll do one more, which will focus a little bit more on how to mobilize your congregation, if that's your emphasis, and that we'll have some people that have hands-on experience with that. And then we have some seed grants that are available. The applications will be due April 22nd, and they'll be sent out to everybody attending these webinars on Monday and posted on thetributaryfund.org. But these seed grants, I'm sorry to say, are only available this year for people that live in the Portland metropolitan area and that are developing or enhancing gardens in that area. And then following that in May, on May 11th in Portland, we'll be doing a celebration, an open garden celebration. Let me check and see if there are any final questions. A lot of people want to know about getting a copy of this presentation. We are recording it and we'll be posting it on YouTube, and we'll send a link out to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with your gardening. I'll be signing off now. Oh, and also I'll be sending out a follow-up survey that will go in an email to you next week. If you wouldn't mind filling that out, that would help us out a great bit. Thank you very much.